Hey, hello. Happy Monday. It is Shamaree. I am a relationship and intimacy coach, and I empower women to get the confidence and pleasure they deserve so they no longer settle for lack of satisfaction, especially in relationships. And I do these weekly Q&As, if I could talk, Q&As where you guys submit questions to me throughout the week in my story. If you're not following me, follow me so that you can keep up with that. If you have questions, you can submit them directly to me and I answer them here for you guys every week, unless it is a holiday or if I just need a break. Next week, it is Memorial Day, so we will not have our traditional Q&A. So if you have questions or anything, you can still submit them, and I keep a list. I have a running list going, so I will get to them. It just will not be next week. And it's good because I do kind of need a little bit of a break. But I do have my questions here. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into that. So the first one is, how long should sex last? How long should sex last? So with this, it's in the nicest way possible, but it's not something you should be asking me. You should be asking your partner, whomever it is, or whomever's plural it is that you're going to be engaging with. Those are the people that matter. You should be asking them that. But then the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention is asking yourself and or any partners that you have, what is the definition of sex? So I know for a lot of people, they think of that as the penis and vagina part of sex. But if you're in a queer relationship, then the body parts may not be a penis and a vagina. So that penetration of the penis in a vagina doesn't constitute sex for those types of relationships. So it's important to know what is considered sex to you, and then knowing what your partner thinks sex is considered, right? So for some people, that's going to include everything that's involved with foreplay. For some people, if they are asexual or otherwise not very interested in having the intercourse part of sex, sexual encounters may include things that are not just that penetration part, right? So that can include maybe dry humping, that can include just touching each other. So you really need to know what it is that you consider sex, what your partner considers sex, and then also kind of consider what your ideal timing is. So for some people, they like 5 minutes and they think that's plenty of time. And then we all know that some people are like, nah, you gotta be going for an hour for it to matter for me. So it really depends on who you're with, and my opinion in that matter, because I'm not the one you with, I don't think that it matters what I think the number should be. It really depends on what you consider sex, what is involved with that, how long you feel is beneficial for you, like what do you get out of the ideal time, and what your partner feels their ideal time is and what they get out of that, and kind of negotiating that between the two of you. So asking those questions and realizing what is important to you and them, that will give you a more clear answer on that. The number, I don't think really matters as much. I think most people tend to worry about the number when the sex that they're having is not satisfactory, which can or may not even be due to the amount of time that they're doing it. So definitely having that conversation, which is very important to do. And part of figuring out what you think sex is and what you enjoy as far as timing and also activities is a lot of introspection and a lot of work sometimes, because we don't necessarily do that every day. And so if you need assistance with that, I do have my course, which is called Better Sex, Guide to Confidence, Satisfaction, and Orgasms Without Faking. So if you need help in figuring out what that is, the course will walk you through all of the steps. It will give you all of the tools. It is currently 50% off. If you are interested in getting that, then definitely check out the link in my Instagram bio. If you click on that and go down to courses, it is the only thing listed there. You click on that and you can put in your information in order to get instant access. So as soon as you sign up, put in your information and process the payment, it is yours. You have it for life. And so you can kind of revisit this, because maybe your idea of what sex is and how long it should last is different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and might be different from what you think it should be in a couple of years from now. So if you have this course for the lifetime, you can always check back in on it, and do some of the activities over, read some of the information. I'm going to be adding stuff along the way. So you might get new information that you can consider that might change how you view things. And it might help kind of facilitate that conversation, because like I said, it does have to be a conversation with the person that you're with. So I appreciate you asking, but I don't think it matters what my opinion is on that specifically. More so who you're actually going to be engaging with. So definitely check the course out if you need help, but definitely have a conversation. It's okay. The next one is, why do smart women act stupid? And this was within this was like the ending question, but this was in the context of logically and intellectually knowing when a situation is not good for you, or being able to witness things that maybe don't align with who you are and what you want in a relationship, but not wanting or not being able to snap out of it once you're in love, or once you feel very strongly for a person. And I did respond to this person already, but I think this is important because it's something that happens often, and I feel like a lot of people put pressure on themselves, like, I know better, but I just can't do better. Like, I know it makes no sense, but I'm so in love, I can't see otherwise, I can't do otherwise, or I don't feel comfortable doing otherwise. And what I say to that is, as humans, because we are human, when we are feeling something very intensely, it can be very overwhelming, and within our body we automatically go into a response where our higher level functioning, our executive thinking, all of that is minimized. So our emotions come to the forefront. It's harder for us to think logically. It's harder for us to think rationally. So even if we know something intellectually, we know what we should be doing, we know what we should accept, we know what we believe and how we feel, but we are allowing things to happen otherwise. So maybe things that we don't feel comfortable with, things that we would never want for ourselves, we're accepting it because we're so caught up in that emotion. And as humans, we have emotions. It's going to happen. We can't necessarily stop them from happening, and I don't think that we should want to stop them from happening. But what I do say to that is making sure that we have our coping strategies, our coping skills, so that as we're having these emotions, we're coping with them, we're managing them so that they don't become so overwhelming that we are no longer able to think rationally. So rather than like, why am I so smart but I'm acting so stupid, rather than just kind of thinking about it that way, making sure that when you are feeling very intensely, that you have the appropriate coping strategies, the appropriate support system, so that you can utilize that in balancing out the emotion versus the rational, the logical thoughts. So it leaves room for you to still think clearly. So if you know that someone is really just not healthy for you, or the relationship is not beneficial to you as a human, even if you love them, you can still see those things very clearly in order for you to come up with a plan in order to figure out what you're going to do about that. Because emotions are important, but they're not the only thing, and we just have to make sure that we're managing them in order to allow room for our thought process to still function at least a higher level than it does when we're overcome with emotions. So that's kind of how I feel about that. It's not that you become stupid. It's not that you become dumb or that you're weak. We're human. It happens. We have emotions. That's just what it is. It's just, how are we going to manage them and what are we going to do with them? That's the most important thing to consider. And if you need help, again, for this month anyway, for the rest of May, if you didn't know, I am doing 60-minute clarity calls. So you can get up to 60 minutes with me, and we can kind of go over what your goals are for yourself and relationships, and to help you to really kind of narrow down what it is that you want and help kind of push you closer to accomplishing those goals. So because May is Mental Health Awareness Month and Masturbation May, that is why it's going to be 60 minutes. After May, you're not getting 60 minutes from me for free. So this is the only opportunity if you're interested in that. That is also in the link in my bio here on Instagram. So if you click on that link, and you should see under Work With Me, the clarity calls. So definitely check that out, and sign up now while you're still able to get the 60 minutes. It is likely not like it's not probably not going to take that long. Let me say that. However, you do get up to that. So depending on your situation, if it's something that's a little bit more in depth, or you're having a really difficult time narrowing things down, then you can use the full 60 minutes and we can kind of work through that a little bit together. So definitely check that out. And I do want to reintroduce myself again. I am Shamaree. I am a relationship and intimacy coach, and I empower women to get the confidence and pleasure that they deserve so they no longer settle for lack of satisfaction, especially within relationships. And another question that I got, since I'm kind of reintroducing myself, I did want to answer this now. So the question was, what inspired me to become a relationship expert? And so ultimately, like, I've always had sort of an interest in relationships and systems and that sort of thing. I just remember, I know we were all kind of like that in middle school, but I always loved to give advice, or people would come to me for advice regarding their relationships. And even though at the time it was a lot of petty, like childish type of things, I really just enjoyed to be able to support someone in that way. And so as I got a little bit older, I thought that I was going to work with children. So I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. I knew that I wanted to provide support to people, but I really thought it was going to be in children. And the more that I was doing that work, children, they cool, but I realized that a lot, because everything that children know and learn comes from what they've learned from other people, what they've seen, their experience. And so a lot of that is built on the foundation of the relationships, whether that's with their parents, their family, their friends, whomever. It all comes back down to relationships. So when I was in grad school, that's kind of when I started to kind of shift a little bit, and I was more interested in dealing with relationships and systems and more adult problems. And that paired with my own personal experience, and I'm not going to get into super detail just in case it's a trigger for some people, but just because of my past sexual assault and going through that as an individual, I had a lot of difficulty when it came to intimacy and just allowing someone to actually like genuinely be close to me. So like I would go through the motions, and I've had boyfriends, I've had sex, I've been close to people, but just never on a deep level. And even in those instances, I would kind of check out in a lot of ways, so I was not fully present within those connections or just even within myself. And I didn't necessarily know that at the time, but as I grew older and I started to talk about some of the things that I've experienced, I kind of realized the impact that it had on me and how important it was to me as a human and my functioning just in general. So even if people didn't know that this is something that I've gone through, or this is why I behave the way that I do, it's something that I couldn't not notice once I noticed it. And so in me trying to find services and help with some of those issues, which I did find, there's therapists, there's sex coaches, and I've done all of that. It's just that when I did, none of the people that I got help from looked like me. And so if you are a person of color, then you know that there's always kind of a certain level of protection that you have to walk around with. And so that it was helpful, and I worked through it, obviously, right? But I felt like I needed more resources. There needed to be more options for someone like me who wanted someone who had maybe a deeper understanding of other things that may be impacting me. So outside of just the sexual assault, outside of just like being a woman, I'm a Black woman, and that's a big part of it. So I think that that was really important in my healing, and I wasn't able to get the type of support that maybe would have been beneficial, might have shortened the amount of time that it took me to work through it. So I wanted to become the resource that I needed. So I needed a me, I didn't have a me. So now I decided with therapy is great. I love doing therapy, but you can't see anyone anywhere. There are a lot of limitations on it. With coaching, there are not those limitations. I can see someone who lives in a different country and it's not regulated. I'm not gonna get in trouble for it, essentially. And so if you feel called to work with me specifically, if you feel like I am the type of person that can be helpful to you, then there's not gonna be difficulty for you to work with me. So you can reach out to me, we can work together, and you can feel that comfortability. You don't have to code switch, you don't have to keep your cape on, you don't have to kind of keep that wall up in the same ways. So that is kind of what called me to doing the coaching sort of thing. But like I said, I've always been interested in relationships, always wanted to do therapy or help people heal and support people through difficulties. But my own personal experience in just being assaulted and what that has done to me as far as the trauma, along with trying to find help, like really wanting help and really needing help, but not having the options that maybe I would have wanted. All of that put together is what led me to wanting to support people through their relationships and creating greater intimacy and comfortability in intimacy, because a lot of us don't feel super comfortable being vulnerable or kind of letting down some of those guards, and then also just getting what you want and enjoying pleasure and feeling like you deserve it and that it's okay and that it's not a bad or shameful thing. That's extremely important to me as a person, and so I'm very happy that I'm able to do this now. But yeah, that's kind of the long but short version of it, essentially. So yeah, if you do want to work with me, if you, like I said, if you feel called to reach out to me, if you feel like anything that I have been through resonates with you, then definitely book one of those clarity calls that I mentioned while they're 60 minutes. In the future, you'll still be able to reach out to me. It's just not going to be 60 minutes. So if you're interested in that and you really, even if you're not sure what you need help with, you just feel like you do, we can figure it out together. I'm completely open for that. So definitely click the link in my bio, click on Clarity Call, go ahead and schedule something so that we can get on the phone and work something out. But I do appreciate that question because it is an important part of who I am, and also just kind of the motivation behind why I'm even doing this in the first place. So I appreciate you for asking. But next question is how to transfer from anxious attachment to more secure attachment. And so if you know anything about attachment styles, then the short end explanation of this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit before. Like everything that we come to be in adulthood comes from childhood. So with attachment styles, we develop attachment styles based on our interactions with our caregivers, even in infantry, like from the beginning of time, essentially. How we learn to be attached to other humans is based on the needs that we had when we were babies, and if they were met or not, and if we can depend on other people or not, all of those sorts of things. So typically people who have insecure or anxious attachments, they feel like they cannot depend on other people to be consistent, to provide them with what they need, when they need it, and those sorts of things. So in order to work through that, there are a few different steps that I kind of would have someone go through. So the first thing is awareness. So some people don't necessarily know that they have this sort of attachment style, or they don't necessarily recognize the patterns. So first we have to become aware of it. We have to understand it. So if you don't know a lot about attachment styles, I would definitely encourage you to look it up. They have all sorts of little quizzes and things that you can take as well online if you want to try to narrow down to figure out what type you may have. But that awareness is definitely key. And if you are super clueless and you're not sure about this at all, sometimes people in our lives, they tell us things or they make mention of things that they feel maybe we can work on or things that they've noticed. And a lot of times we can be defensive to those things, but what you have to do is you have to kind of think logically, right? So taking as much as you can, because like I said, we're humans, we have feelings, but as much as you can, removing the feeling from it and analyzing whether or not you trust this person. Is this person someone who you can believe their word? Think about whether or not they're trying to be hurtful to you. So if you trust them, they're not trying to be hurtful, they're not trying to be malicious, they're expressing something to us. More often than not, in those instances, there's validity to what they're saying. So whether or not I agree 100%, if this person is someone I trust, they're not trying to be malicious, they're trying to be helpful, they notice something within me, there's something to it, there's a reason that they're saying this. So we have to kind of take a step back and listen to what people are saying. Don't necessarily accept everything that everyone says, but again, analyze who the person is, what role they play in your life, how much information they have, and if it's something that they're not trying to be hurtful about, really sit back and think about if there's any truth to it, if it's ever been true in any instance, and what evidence they have to support it, what evidence you can find that supports what they're saying. And that can kind of help you to point out certain patterns that maybe you would not have thought about on your own, because sometimes we don't think that critically about what we're doing because we're so used to doing it. So that would be number one, that awareness. And if you can't reach that awareness on your own or through any of the quizzes that you see online or what you're reading online, definitely allow the people in your life to point things out to you, people that you trust, people that are honest, people who do not want to hurt you, they only have your best interest at heart. Those are the people that we want to take feedback from. So once we have that awareness, we're able to see these patterns and to see these thoughts that we have. We are then able to move on to the second part of this, which is challenging. So if you know me, then you know I say that people need to question everything. So at the end of the day, I tell people you need to question me too. So like, I know the things that I say have truth. I know where the information is coming from and all of that, but you don't know that. So you need to question everything. So when I say challenge, so once you're aware of what your attachment style is, and the things that you're doing, the patterns that you're presenting, how you behave or interact with other people, challenge some of those thoughts. So a lot of time when people have like an anxious attachment style, they believe that the person that they're with, or even if it's like a friend or a colleague, whoever, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but they are of the belief that they can't depend on this person to always want to stay. So if they go out with their friends, they worry that they're not going to come back, or they worry that they're not going to be able to stay faithful. They worry that they're not going to be loyal. They worry that that's going to change the relationship. And so they are anxious and they get worried about that. So challenging some of those thoughts. So we grow to have these thoughts and these feelings as a protection. So anything that we develop over time, it is a defense mechanism. We do it because it worked. It worked. And it works until it doesn't. Everything works until it doesn't. So if it's no longer working for you, it gets to a point where you're noticing these things and maybe it's creating conflict in your relationship. So you need to start to challenge some of those thoughts. So what evidence do I have that this person's not going to come back? And especially if there's someone that you've been with for a while, if they've gone out with friends before, they came back, right? So because they wouldn't be back to be able to go out with their friends again if they didn't come back the first time, right? So just challenging those thoughts and like really bringing it down to logic and being rational, because our feelings are going to be very strong, but really bringing in even just like probability. How likely is it that they're not going to come back? So if we live in the same place, your name's on the lease or your name is on the deed along with mine, how likely is it that you're really not going to come back? Like, it can happen, of course. There's always that possibility, but it's more likely that they're going to come back, right? So just challenging some of those thoughts. And then while we're challenging these things, it's not going to be easy. We're going to be even more anxious because that's just maybe our natural state, right? We learn to be anxious and to worry and try to control these things because that's what we had to adapt to do over time. So while we're challenging these things, we're going to be even more anxious because we're no longer doing what we used to do, right? And so we have to have coping strategies, coping techniques to help us to work through the anxiety. So if that's mindfulness, if it's working out, if it's finding hobbies and things that occupy our time, other things that can bring us joy. So maybe if that person is gone, we are not feeling empty. We're feeling like, okay, this is a time for me to focus on me, do some self-care, do something that I enjoy doing. Maybe it's something that they don't like. So maybe this is a perfect time for me to do the thing that they don't like. Because I don't have to worry about them feeling left out or, so like it gives you time to focus on self. So meditation, and like anything that eases anxiety. And there's tons of those things, which we can probably get into another time, but making sure that you have coping strategies. And with coping strategies, I always say at least a handful of options, at least. So yes, if you're the type of person you love to work out or maybe you love to take a bath, if you're feeling anxious and you're in the middle of work and you work outside of your home, you're not going to be able to stop and take a bath. You're not going to be able to stop and work out. So you want to make sure that you have coping strategies that fit all sorts of settings, all sorts of times of day, and also access things that you will be able to do. So like in those instances, maybe I need to focus on my breathing, or maybe I need to take a walk or drink some really cold water, whatever it is, things that I can do in more than one location. So making sure that we have tons of options, at least a handful, and a handful is 5. So at least 5. So we're doing those coping strategies. Once we become aware, we challenge the thoughts. We have the coping strategies that help us to work through as we're challenging those things. And then the fourth thing that I would say is to model secure attachment, or behave as if you are or have secure attachment. So if you see other people and you see what they look like and they're secure within their attachment, they're secure within their different relationships, doing more of what they do. So acting as if you are secure, just so that you can start to feel what it looks like to behave in a secure relationship and a secure attachment. So just putting on those behaviors, seeing what it feels like, using the coping strategies while you do it, because it might not feel super comfortable, especially at first. It's probably not going to feel super comfortable or super easy. So just trying on those behaviors, surrounding yourself with people who are secure as much as you can. It can be easy to seek someone who has a similar attachment style as us, because we function in the same way, but it does make it a little bit more difficult, whereas when you have secure people in your life, they can kind of also keep you in check. So I think that that's important. And so definitely have an awareness, figure out what you're doing, what you're thinking, challenge it, question it, figure out what it is that you were getting from it before. Is it still working? What is it doing for you now? And how you can possibly create a better or healthier situation for you. Using coping strategies as you're working through all of that is highly important to always have coping strategies. regardless of what the issue is, even if it's not attachment, making sure that you have those ways to work through it, and then behaving as if you are secure even before you start to feel like you have any sort of secure attachment. So those are kind of the steps that you would go through. Obviously, there's more specific things that you would do within each of those categories, but that's just a very general thing. If you want to work on that more specifically, that is something that you can definitely book a call for. And we can talk more specifically about you and the things that you're doing, and really kind of plan around that specifically. And then last question. So what are some things you can say to your partner if they don't prioritize your pleasure? What are some things you can say to your partner if they don't prioritize your pleasure? And so I'm not necessarily going to give you specific words because I don't know what they're doing or not doing in your situation. But what I can say is, just like with any other difficult topic, definitely using healthy, effective communication techniques. So the first thing would be saying this or even bringing up the conversation at a safe, neutral time. So making sure that no one's super stressed or super hungry, not when you're in the middle of a fight, not right after you had some sex that you were dissatisfied with. Pick a time that is neutral, where both of you are in a neutral state of mind, a neutral space. So physically, making sure that you're in a safe space, a safe environment. That would be number one. The second thing that I would mention is using I statements. So a lot of times when we feel like we're not getting what we're wanting from another person, it can very easy to be like, well, you don't do this, or whenever I want this, you tend to do that instead. And so it can very much feel like an attack when we're constantly saying you are not doing this, or you need to stop doing this, you always do this, or you never do this. It feels very much like they are the only person at fault. And naturally, we can feel defensive, we can feel offended, and it could hurt our feelings. And oftentimes when we get to that point, like I said, we shut down. So using I statements. So I would like to feel this way, or I enjoy this activity. I like when we do that. I would want to do this many times, or for this amount of time. Going back to the first question, being very specific with what you want. So speaking from the I stance, this is what I like, I want, I enjoy, so that it doesn't feel like an attack. It's more so coming from your perspective. And then the next thing would be sandwiching. You can try the sandwiching technique. So saying, I really love how excited you get. I would want for us, I want to be able to be a part of your excitement. So in order for me to feel as excited as you, maybe if we tried to do foreplay for a little bit longer, maybe if we tried to add a toy. So you're bringing a solution, and you're sandwiching something that maybe not as a positive. So like, I'm not as excited as you, but I would love to be as excited as you. And so instead of saying, well, like, I know that you get super excited, I'm not. That could be hurtful. So instead saying, I love how excited you get, and I would love to be just as excited as you. And you know what would get me really excited is this. So it's the same sentiment. I'm telling you, like, basically, I'm not as excited as you are about this. Like, it's not as great for me as it is for you. But the way that I'm presenting that to him or her is a lot easier to take on the other person, right? So that's one way. Another thing that kind of goes along with that is using and instead of but. So I love that you want to just get right to it, but I don't want to, or I'm not ready. But we always learn everything after the but just contradicts everything that you said before it, right? So when we're using but, people are already prepared to get on the defense. So instead, using and instead of but. So like, I love that you want to get right to it, and I like when we are able to slow it down a little bit and take a little bit of our time. So maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. So I said so it doesn't put the other person immediately on the defense. It makes it a little bit easier for them to see and to hear where I'm coming from, right? So those are some ways that you can kind of approach it to soften it a little bit. And those are things that you can use when the topic is anything. So obviously when it comes to sex and pleasure, a lot of times people can be embarrassed, they can feel ashamed, they can be shy about it, or just uncomfortable in general. So using some of those same normal, effective, healthy communication tips that you hear about whenever they talk about like arguing in a healthy way or bridging conflict in a healthy way. All of that can be used for pleasure, but it can also be used when we're talking about chores. So definitely apply those things to pleasure for sure, just to soften it, make it a little bit easier for people to hear, but also use it in all other instances that you feel are necessary. And part of our being able to have these conversations is being honest with ourselves, knowing ourselves, feeling confident and strong in what we're saying, being assertive and all of those sorts of things. And like I said, that involves confidence. So if you are a person that wants a confidence boost, needs a confidence boost, or just are interested in what I would even say about confidence, I am doing a 5-day challenge. It's called Complete Confidence. It's going to be hosted within a Facebook group. And this is a free challenge, no cost to you. Anyone can sign up, where we'll be going over very practical ways that you can build your confidence, because confidence is at the foundation of how we interact with people. So it's gonna be at the foundation of our relationships. If we're not feeling super confident, it's gonna make relationships a little bit more difficult. It's gonna be having these conversations a lot more difficult. So definitely sign up for the challenge. Go to the link in my Instagram bio, just like with everything else, it's all there. But if you go under work with me, you can join the 5-day challenge. Just fill out the form, then it'll direct you to sign up for the Facebook group where it will be hosted, and it's gonna be good. I'm giving like actual information, so like actual things that you can do. People always ask me about confidence and like how. But how? We always say you gotta be confident, you gotta love yourself, you gotta do this, you gotta do that before you can have successful relationships. But what does that actually look like, right? So the challenge is gonna tell you exactly what that looks like. So if you are in need of that confidence boost, go to the link, sign up, share it. Also, we can all, hey, Dr. Jack, we can always use a confidence boost. If you know me personally, if you ask any of my friends, they'll tell you that my confidence is probably like one of the highest of the people that they know. But I still get more confident every single day. So I think that the challenge is something that anyone can benefit from. So even if you feel like you do have great confidence in life, is definitely something that can be helpful. So definitely check out my Instagram bio. Like I said, my course is there, so if you need help with figuring out what sex is to you, how long it should last, and all of those sorts of things, what feels good, what you like, the course will help you to kind of narrow some of that down and figure out what that is, and kind of strip away all of the things that we're told that it needs to be. And the clarity calls are there if you want to work with me specifically only for the month of May. It's going to be 60 minutes. After May, it's not going to be 60 minutes. I'm doing it for Mental Health Awareness and Masturbation May. So if you want that 60 minutes, you want to get in before the end of the month. And then, like I said, the Confidence Challenge, 5 days for the free, just to give you some very practical ways that you can boost your confidence so that you're able to show up more fully and more confidently in your relationships and your intimacy, because you deserve that. So that's all the questions that I have for today. Thank you for watching. If you have made it this far, definitely you the MVP. Hashtag replay if you're catching the replay. And I will not be here next week because it's the holiday, but you can definitely catch me on the stories and posting anyway, so you might still see my face. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm about to go because I have a meeting in a little bit, but bye guys.